เพราะว่าไข่พุกยังไงไข่เว้ยเขาก็ปิดเอามันเนี่ย
Morning.
ก็นี่ปิดล่ะ
Ugh.
มันก็ไหล
Corn is amazing when it starts to grow. You saw a little bit of video in the previous video, and it was about 5-6 inches high. It's now about 1 foot 6 inches high. Obviously varies in size. Some are quicker than others, but it grows at an amazing pace. And that previous video was only a few days. Not a week, not any extended period of time you might consider. It was, barely, probably 4 days ago. It's just amazing. It's almost unbelievable how quick corn can actually shoot up. Mangoes are doing well. The ants love them. Generally, they don't spoil the fruit, the ants. They're busy doing other stuff. But there's fruit there that will need to be taken shortly. We already took one batch. Maybe a dozen when they're in the home. There's the corn, looking beautiful. Maybe corn's not your thing, but it grows extremely quickly. It's probably why it's became one of the preferred crops in very many places in the world. Sure, corn is reduced down for sugars and things like that in many foodstuffs. It's used as an additive. Corn is a big crop, I think, on the stock exchange. But yeah, it's an amazing product. Probably its speed of growth is the thing that makes it attractive for growers, for investors, all alike, so widely used. This is the upside. There's so much fruit on here. We've got bamboo holding up the branches, or it just dangles down and the lower branches end up on the ground and you can spoil the fruit. So these are beautiful. These are all good size. Here's perspective of how big these ones are at the moment. So that's hand-sized mango. Not too long, that'll be ready for picking. A bit of time for many of the others, but there's a good crop on here. Walking through the rubber trees from the big house, project house, and where the corn crop is, heading over towards the road Manau, we call it. That's because it had lemon trees for the full length of that one rye. 3 rows one side, 3 rows the other side, and a road in the middle, an axis, so that we could work it. And it was also important as an access for the tractors and harvesters when they came in. But Talani saw it as a great flat space and she cultivated it and started growing stuff in it very quickly. So we don't have the number of lemons we used to have, but that's been replaced by a lot of other things that interest Talani, that she has a use for, that have a value, a sale price. Talani does like things to look beautiful, but she's very, very much focused on useful. Things have to have a use, or she's got no use for them. Can very quickly, easily be just discarded out of hand. Here we are with this crop here. You can see there's plenty of fruit on those. You can call it fruit as a generic term, but obviously it's a vegetable. Like an eggplant, used widely in Thai cooking, and we're getting a very, very good crop with those. These plants seem to like this area, seem to like what we're doing and how we're doing it, and yeah, it's working well. Over here we've got these guys, they're doing well, ready for another pick. We've had quite a good return out of those so far. Lemon trees are over there. So we head off of Talani's property. This is the border, and we're on to Jibjoy's farm. Morning! Somebody come to see Mem and the flowers. Mem's busy over here watering. Heaps of flowers here on Jibjoy's farm. In the distance, we've got going up those frameworks. And then this patch over on the next farm, which is Sister Rat's farm, which tractor came in and turned. Then Mem went through and cultivated. And the question was, what's going on here? Well, it's more flowers. I told you that in the previous video it's going to be more flowers to replace Flower Patch 1 over near where we just looked at the corn. That used to be Flower Patch 1. This patch here is basically replacing that patch. with the next crop of flowers. So seedlings were planted in yesterday, 5 trays, and I have to do all my recalculation now because I actually took time to count how many rows of seedlings there are in a tray. And the trays are actually 12 by 24. So where I believing there were a couple of hundred, 200, yeah, they are at 288. They're closer to 300 per tray. So 5 trays went in here, 1500 in here, seedlings. And each seedling will become a plant. And when it's a plant, each plant will produce very, very many blooms, hundreds of blooms. That was completed yesterday evening on these last few rows, planting those, using the water from the solar powered pump over here. Not our pump, the pump on Jibjoy's farm that went in recently. But these have been well flooded, these rows have been well flooded with water, because the soil was quite dry. Nothing had been used here since rice crop, cultivated here since rice crop. So that's that one underway, and obviously that will take over from the flowers when they, how do I describe this? Basically about 4 plantings, but initially there was half of that one over there on the road, Manal, and then the second half a little while staggered later. Then Mem decided to go here on Jibjoy's farm, and these went in as seedlings when those ones were coming to maturity. Now seedlings have gone in over there on Rat's farm, which will basically replace that crop over the other side of the bananas on Road Minau as they lose volume and are not producing anymore, or not producing to the volume that's necessary. Because there is a break-even point. The amount of effort and water you put in and fertilizer you put in, if they're not producing a decent number of blooms, she'll just turn them in. And then obviously she has to wait till another patch is in production before she does that. But this patch is in full production. And she did something a little bit different with the yellow bloom. She got a different seedling. It wasn't the same flowers before. And these, and you can't see them there now, produced an enormous amount of what we call jumbo blooms. They're the biggest, and that they have a grading system of 1 to 3. The jumbo is the largest, and here we go. Is a bloom of about that size compared to a regular bloom which might be that size. And then you have the smaller blooms which will be about that size. In fact, there's another one there. It's sort of in between. Regular size blooms there, maybe they're 2s, 3s, jumbos. Yesterday we had lady picking all day long. We took about 40 bags of flowers out of here, and probably 20 of those bags were jumbo blooms. So they'll be going to market. Today we'll put some on ice, some will be sold, and some will be made into arrangements for going to market for Mem to sell. Down this way, down here we have the bamboo framework going up. Showed you that previously. We had a few orphan plants sort of sitting out that didn't really warrant a framework themselves, but I gave in and I made a rough framework for these, so they'll have something to climb. But generally the other cues are doing well. I went through and fertilised them. I put a bit of manure in yesterday afternoon, give them something to get on with. On these ones here you can see they're very happy. They're right up to the top of the framework. They were doing very well there with cucumbers there. So, sorry, I said cucumbers. Beans. These are the snake beans. Cucumbers are over the other side with Joe opposite the corn crop. He's got that happening there. Or Mem's got it happening and he's tending it for her because it's close to the house where him and his aged father are staying with us at the moment. So that's all well and good. What's left of what we originally called the failed patch, where seedlings didn't come up. A few rows here, but amongst that, something that did survive was some pumpkin seeds. So I've given them a bit more manure. They seem to be quite strong. Their growth level is a little bit slow, so I added some more fertiliser, some more manure yesterday to see if that might sort of spark them up and make them come alive a bit. So we'll see what happens there. If they've got flowers on, that's usually good news. That normally means that they're getting all the nutrients they want. Otherwise, very often many vegetable stocks like that or many plants, they'll usually only flower in ideal conditions where they're getting close to or where they're getting the required amount of water and where they're getting the right kind of nutrients. It's that old story of life will find a way, but there's a combination of criteria which go together which make it possible. And for them to create what they do, their fruit, the flowers lead to the fruit usually has the seeds in. That's their way of sort of propagating their species, because if you didn't pick the fruit and eat them, then the fruit would melt down to the seed would go in the ground and the next crop would come. Many animals in the animal kingdom, they won't reproduce unless the conditions are ideal. Like if you're in a drought season, or if you're in a poor food area or whatever, where there wasn't sufficient for feeding offspring, then they usually will not reproduce, or they will do it at a lower level than normal throughout the animal kingdom. That's quite common. But anyway, we have people working here. We have a lady who's come today and she's picking flowers.